We're currently in the 9 days, and Lefinis Daiti, the avoda of the 9 days, and Tisha B'av is really hinted to in the first word of the Megillah, which is what? Eicha. Eicha. And Eicha has a number of meanings. One explanation that we say in Kinos is Eiko. Eikoi. Koi is the word ko usually introduces a situation where there's Shechina. So where is the Shechina? Eiko. That's one explanation. But another explanation of Eicha is Ayeka. How could it be? How could it be? And the response, the cry, as it were, of how could it be, we say, when you look around the world and we come to a recognition that it's really not the way it's supposed to be. We're supposed to be shocked. And this is what the Gemara says in Chagiga. Rebbe was reading the Megillah, and it was on the roof, and it slid off and hit the ground. And he said, Me'igur Ramad Bir Mikta. We went from the highest heights to the lowest depths. And that's the shock. Tisha B'Av, we're supposed to be shocked. We're supposed to look around and see that it's just not the way it's supposed to be. And one of the primary manifestations of that is the Beis HaMikdash. I was at the Kosel this morning, and it's wonderful to daven at the Kosel, but there's no Shechina there, right? There's no 10 miracles. There's no Kohanim, Leviim, Yisraelim, Korbanos. Ayeka. Where is it? That's really the response that we're supposed to have during the days. As much as we're able to, it's really hard because we don't know what it was like. But it doesn't just stop with the Beis HaMikdash. Really, the whole world is not the way it's supposed to be, and especially Klal Yisrael. And Lamaisa once, Rav Yirmiyah Kaganov once told me, he said, I know what a Jew is meant to look like because I was a Talmud of Rav Ruderman. Right? I know what a Jew is meant to look like. And I could say myself, I was a Talmud of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and Shlomo Safrani, Rav Shlomo Brevda, Rav Shlomo Volba, some very great Shlomos in my life. And I know what a Jew is supposed to look like, Rav Asher Eli. I was telling someone last night, I was once on Purim with Rav Asher Eli. There were 200 people there, and he was talking to me. He was just focused on me, like nobody else in the world existed, right? And there's many Klal Yisrael, on one hand, we're doing amazing. We have yeshivas, koilim, chinuch. On the other hand, we have to look around today and realize that things are not exactly the way we want them to be. Now, I want to divert for a second. Last night I was asked to give a shiur to a group of individuals who had lost their close relatives through suicide. Right? We spoke about one of them right after Purim. One of my close talmidim was taken by suicide, and I suggested that the suicide victim themselves, if we don't consider them a ma'avid atzma l'das, which in this case it wasn't, and in many cases it's not, it means that they had very little control over their actions. Right? They're not a ma'avid atzma l'das, which means what? Which means that they were given a certain amount of years in their life. Let's say they lived 30, 40 years, and their life ended, and it ended in such a way. The question is, so why did Hashem make it end in such a way, such a powerful way? So I obviously don't have an answer to that question. I'm not God. But what I suggested is for us, for the people who were close to these people, that we should learn something. And one thing I can tell you myself is that when this incident happened, like within a day I became incredibly more sensitive about what's going on in the world and about people, because here you have somebody, I didn't know that this was his situation. I didn't know it was so serious. And it is a tefillah. It's a claim, yeah. It's a obligation for the people around others to recognize that there's a lot of people out there who are just suffering, and to become more sensitive to these people. And the truth is, Rav Shimon Galoy told me once. He said, I asked him, like, why is the divorce rate so high today? He said, because people don't know what a Jewish home looks like. Yeah, and if we knew, then it would be very, very different. It would be very, very different. So that's the question. So how do we educate our children and ourselves? What are we supposed to do, right? Because the Finis Daiti, right? If we want to keep our children healthy, psychologically and emotionally, mentally, we have to give them positive experiences. Someone there in the group mentioned, okay, psychological disorders. So, just by giving a positive, healthy atmosphere is not necessarily going to change that, but it's not entirely true. A lot of these psychological illness today is what's called personality disorders, and it's known that many of the personality disorders come from an imbalanced childhood, being criticized, ignored, not being loved, feeling insecure. And what happens is, what personality disorder is that the personality develops like armor, as it was described to me. You develop armor, and that protects you, and it causes certain unwanted responses, and that could lead to major things. As the person, my Talmud who was nifter, had what's called borderline personality disorder, which is a very common diagnosis for people who they can't really figure out what's wrong. And so that's definitely true. It's definitely true that by giving children a healthy atmosphere, loving, caring, concerned, no. Lamaisa, I was speaking to somebody in America this morning, and we were discussing something which is the reality that Lamaisa in almost the entire world, Earth's world included, most people today have iPhones, which changed the whole sort of communication. It used to be, if you wanted to talk to somebody, right, either you meet them in person or you call them up on the phone. And you call them up and you say, Daniel, how you doing? How's your day? How's it going? Right? When you have communication either through email or iPhones or WhatsApp or texts, texts are like, you can only send a few words. So you cut out all of the, small talk. And just like, I need this, I need that, do this, do that. And the result of that is that you have a whole generation of children and adults who are raised on the without the chinuch, as it were, of being nice to people, being concerned about people, and really cutting out the humanity of life. And really, as a result, right, that within families, within friends, within neighbors, like I'm sitting in the airport and just like everybody's sitting there like, like 5. I saw 5 people on a bench just all going like this, like nobody's talking to each other anymore. There's a husband and wife in a restaurant and they're going like this, maybe they're like texting each other, what should we order? I don't know, I don't know. But but look, this is the Metzias in the world. Now, probably one of the greatest things that the Rabbanim in Eretz Yisrael ever did was to put a stop on the technology right at the beginning. Right at the beginning, they realized that this is dangerous. Yeah, that this is dangerous, and not just because of the material you can get on it. Yeah, but because of this cutting out of society, of interaction, and also of attention. Yeah, a person who's like constantly looking for one thing or the other just destroys your attention span. So this is something we really have to realize. So l'maisa, one mahalach, right? One mahalach is to try to bring up your children in a society where they don't have it. Okay, but that's not most people, in the world. It's not most people in the world. So what are you supposed to do? So l'maisa, I suggested to this group, right, that we want to try to our maximum capacity, especially during these days of the 9 days. We're supposed to really think about what Klal Yisrael is supposed to look like, right? Klal Yisrael is supposed to be a, one Rav once called it like a club. It's a group, it's a chibur, right? As we said, b'shechanti b'soicham. It doesn't say b'soicho, it doesn't say b'socho, b'socham. in the lave of every Jew, when the lave of every Jew has only pure good feelings for other Jews, then the Beis HaMikdash will be rebuilt. That's the end of Sinas Chinam. Right? We have to create and how do you build that status quo? So you have to care about people. You have to show concern. All these things cut it out. All of the social media and things that it cuts it out, right? So Lamaisa, we have to try to our best of our ability to bring it back into our family, into our chinuch, to everything we do. So it's very interesting. After I finished this year, and I feel I presented a really beautiful picture of what the Jewish people are supposed to look like, a guy got on the Zoom and he said, but, my brother committed suicide, and one of the reasons he did was because people didn't give him space. They were too friendly and nice to him. So I was a little taken aback by the question, yeah? And obviously, look, that's his interpretation. But I think there's something very important to be said over here, right? Is this Lamaisa, and look, I'm already 54. I'm living in a completely, totally different world, probably than anybody else here, right? I grew up without all these things. It was just a different world, right? But even growing up with all this, so our children are going to be very, very different than us, yeah. And you have to come to the reality and deal with them, ba'asher hu sham, and realize that they're in that world. And even though they're in that world, if they're in that world, yeah, to relate to them wherever they are. It's such a critical point. Every single person to learn to relate to them exactly where they are, and especially people with psychological labels, whether it be personality disorder, whether it be other psychological conditions. Maybe they're a certain way different than everyone else, and maybe they're this and maybe they're that. Whatever it might be, yeah, to learn how to relate to people, ba'asher hu sham, exactly who they are, and not to look at people through your own definition of what's good and bad, but to understand exactly where they're coming from. That if we're able to do that, there's a very important feeling created, of understanding, and that really, that's really so critical today to bring up healthy children. They shouldn't feel isolated. Most of these people, and I'm telling you, for the past 3 months, every week I heard about somebody, this one, that one. I'm in Chutz La'aretz. Yeah, my niece committed suicide. This one committed suicide. These people committed suicide. It's happening very, very frequently with young people. Yeah, and to me, it's clear this is a sign of the times. Yeah, this is a sign of the times. People are feeling isolated. They're feeling alone. They're feeling confused. They don't know how to deal with things. They don't have to deal with life. They don't have the social strength that we had in previous generations, as we mentioned. Yeah, and it's critical during these times to have a very close bond with our children and with our family and with our friends, and really care and express. Now, like this guy said, you don't have to be in somebody's face. Yeah, but if somebody is thinking about suicide and nobody knows about it, then that's a big problem. Rav Dov Brizak he used to be in Neve Yaakov. I think now he spends a lot of time in Los Angeles. But he was walking down the street and he saw a guy who looks depressed, and he just was going to walk by, but he spoke to him. The guy was on his way to commit suicide, and he stopped it. Yeah, because he showed concern about somebody else. Yeah, so showing concern about another Jew, this is the ultimate chesed that we could do, and this is what Rav David Cohen told me. This is the L'sasik b'gemilut chasadim. Isaskus implies all the time, 24/7. It's like without Isaskus b'Torah is learning basmada. Chazon Ish says if you learn 12 hours straight, it's karahu nevuah, right? If you didn't learn 4 hours straight, then you really haven't touched on real limud Torah. But if you learn 12 hours, so that's Isaskus b'Torah. What's Isaskus b'gemilut chasadim? How is it possible? There's only so much chesed you could do. Sarah David Cohen is asking Gemilut Chasadim is constantly be concerned about other people. Like all the time you're looking, what can I do for this person? What can I do for that person? How can I help them? How can I make them feel good? And status quo, assume that everybody around you is a potential suicide victim. Yeah? Assume that everybody around you might have had a hard childhood, might be suffering, might be going through a hard marriage, might be going through financial difficulties, might be going through health problems. Yeah? Because it's the truth. Yeah, you could assume that that's basically the truth. The only question is how bad is it? Yeah? If you go through life like that and you make that assumption, and you treat other people in that way, then number one, Klal Yisrael will look very different, and number two, it's a big. I think it's the best we could do at this point. It's the best we could do at this point in the reality that we live in. Of course, you can't be in somebody's face. You have to give people their privacy, and sometimes the best thing is just to pull back. It's true what this person said, yeah. But at the same time, right, to show concern about other people, it's one of the basics of a Jew to be concerned, and that's Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh. We're all responsible for each other, yeah. If there's another Jew who's thinking about suicide and nobody knows about it, nobody has shown any care, so that's a major taina. That's one of the pshatim in the Egla Rufa. We bring a kapara because how could it be? How could it be somebody died and nobody knew about it? How could it be that somebody died and he wasn't properly taken care of? So this is something we really could work on, especially during these days. And we need great siyata d'shmaya because it's really not easy. We're all kind of like sucked up in the world today, in this world, in this vortex, as you might call it, of technology and fast. Everything's like very fast today. I was talking to a doctor in Switzerland, and he told me, and he's one of my talmidim, so I could talk to him for a little while. He said, like, doctors have no time today, no time. Rabbanim have no time. Doctors have no time. Nobody has any time today, And I was called Rav David Morgenstern yesterday, and he gave me all the time I needed. He's a very rare person. You call him up, it was a very important issue. It was a question of a surgery for somebody, and he gave me all the time I needed. Exactly. There's very few people like that today. Showing that you are given over to another person with your time, with your attention. I'm giving a shiur the other day, and half the people in the shiur are texting or sending WhatsApps. And I said, it must be a really good shiur. You're sending it all to your friends. And it just became the status quo. It's like mukubal today just to ignore, be this, and that's accepted. So what happens as a result? So that's a breakdown in society. It's a breakdown in society. It's a breakdown in kavod habrios. To be able to sit in front of somebody else. Okay, maybe it's a really boring shiur, So whatever, I don't know, go to sleep or something. But to sit and be like that, okay. So it's just but it's accepted. It's accepted. So our job as parents, as mechanchen, as rabbanim, as manhigim, is right. And as Rabbi Goodman told me yesterday, a job of a rav is really to love other people, And a talmid really has to feel like the Rebbe really cares about them. This is one of the pshatim, in fact. Im kamal hasem svakos tivakish tar mipiu. Right. One of the pshat is a malach doesn't go up. Right. He's only concerned about the talmid, and that's his primary focus, not in himself. He's not looking right as Rav Leuchter. What's Rav Leuchter's first name? Reuven Leuchter. Right. When I came to start the kollel, he said, "Why do you want to start a kollel?" He says, "Why do you want to start a kollel?" So I said, "I want to give." He said, "Oh, that is your first mistake." He said, "You don't give like this." He said, "You give like this." Yeah, and that was one of the most powerful moments of my life, because you don't give taking yourself and implanting printing your personality on other people, right? One, as Daniel Taib said, everybody knows that I want people here at 9:00. Yeah, not 9:01. And I go, okay, what can I do? People have their lives and that. So I keep quiet and I just dive into Hashem and hope that everybody has a tzlacha in that. But you don't build talmidim by going like this. You build talmidim by going like this, which means taking their energy and focusing it. And that's chanoch l'nar al pi darko. There's a moiradik zach from Moshe Feinstein. If Moshe Feinstein said it, would be usher to say it, but he said it. He gave us the pasuk to say it. He says by Yaakov and Esav, until they were 13, no one knew the difference between them. He said that's a taina on Yitzchak and Rivka, right? He said Esav should have been sent to a yeshiva. What do they call it? What do they call it? Not tichoni. Yeshiva. That had hunting. Not for chas v'shalom, not shachaba. With hunting. What else? Arts and crafts. Building. Mechanics. It was different. You can't mechanech Esav and Yaakov in the same yeshiva. It just doesn't work. Yeah. So Lamaisa, that's chanoch l'nar al pi darko. Al Kain Yazkin Lo Yasim, right? We have to know the chinuch of this generation is completely different than earlier door, right? And it's challenging because we might not know how to do it. Certainly me, I'm from prehistoric ages. Like I was walking in New York City and there was a guy talking to his son and saying, there used to be a thing called phone booths and you would go in and make a phone call, and people didn't have. And the guy was like, "What? Like really? Like he has eyes open, and maybe going to the Naturalistic Museum, they still have one there. Yeah. So the world has changed a lot, and a lot of the things are really helpful. The technology is incredible what you could do today. I was giving a shir on Shabbos to women, and I was talking about, having iPhones. So one says pulled out two. I have two of them, It's not, it's a doctor. She's on call. She said, it's incredible what you could do. It's incredible things. Yeah. So look, we have to know there's tremendous good today, but there are challenges, and the challenges have to be recognized, and you have to realize that they're there. And we have to realize that the danger that exists today is the insecurity, right? When there was strong relationships between people, yeah, the security was much more. When there wasn't all of these distractions, cars and things and all, and technology, life was much more simple. There were real relationships. It's not to say that like all relationships were good, but Reb Kaganoff wrote a book called Dear Kal, I think, and she said these are like simple things that every mother told their daughter, when they got married, and but simple things people don't know today, like the simplest things about chinuch, about raising children, about how to build a Jewish home. People have no idea what it is today. People want to get married and one chassan told me, he says, I don't understand. My wife is not serving me breakfast in bed. Like, what's going on? I'm supposed to be treated like a king, And the guy was serious. So, people think, and they're mechonech. The whole generation is mechonech to be served, to be taken care of. There was one function, and nobody helped at the function except for one family. And, okay, because they all, and it's not tying on them, because everybody is expects to be served. There's a whole generation where we expect to be served. And it's unfortunate because a lot of the major, beautiful things about Klal Yisrael have unfortunately disappeared. Almost, right? But you can still find them. Reb Rev used to say from Chatzkel Levenstein, it says before Mashiach comes, a emes nederes. Nederes, he says, what does nederes means? Hidden. So Reb Chatzkel used to say, it won't be gone. He says, but it's going to be very, very, very deep. You're going to have to dig very, very deep to get to the truth today. And look, I got an email 3 days ago. Someone asked me, who's this Rav Safrani, who you always quote, And I told him, he says, yeah, he's the Gadol Hador. I said, I agree, But you know why I think he's the Gadol Hador? Because he's the Rav in 70 shuls, and when you talk to him, he listens to you, yeah? He only you. He talks to you, he listens. And of course, look, he's very great in Torah. But Reb Rev the one said, it's a medrash in Shmos, the reason Moshe Rabbeinu was chosen to be in the Manik Yisrael was a Maisa with a sheep, and a sheep ran and ran and ran, and he ran after the sheep. So Hashem says, you care so much about one sheep, you are the Manik Yisrael. He said the difference between a Manik Yisrael, the leader of the Jewish people, and a leader of other nations, he says, caring about the individual. Every individual is important. There's no such thing as and that's really important, right? Every single individual is important, and when you talk to someone, be with them. Don't be on your phone and your computer and this. And it's just it's a lack of kavod habrios, even if it's mukubal, it's the minhag, I was telling someone this, it's hard for me to give shir, but I said, but that's the minhag, that's the minhag in when you give shir in certain places. So, but you can't have a minhag for something which is antithetical to human respect. Or I guess you can, but what can we do to deal with that? Anyway, Al Kopanim. So just to sum up here, we said that the Yisod of the 9 days on Tisha B'Av is Ayeka. To look around and see it's not the way it's meant to be. The Jewish people not the way. Baruch Hashem, the Klal Yisrael is steiging. We have so many good things, but still, we don't have a Beis Hamikdash. We don't have Shechina, and certainly there's a problem in relationships. There's a problem the way we relate to our children. There's a problem we relate to other people, and this. We have to work on it. And Baruch Hashem, we have Anashim Gedolim that we can learn from, and Sfarim, and examples from very, very great people, right? one of the best things that I ever did with my kids was every night before they went to sleep for 2 years, we learned to say for Chikum Mamtakin, Chikum Mamtakin. Just Maisim from Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach about Chesed. How he used his goiness in Torah for Chesed. And like each one was like an incredible chinuch for them, So you want to be mechanech your children how the way to interact with other people is. Read that book, Halavai, someone should translate into English. I've been trying to find someone for the past few years. But it's too important. The HR won't let it happen. So, Al Kopanim, especially during this time, let's try to mechazik this inyan as much as we can. And Halavai, if in this group, or anyone listening to this year, if each person makes a little impact on themselves, it'll make an impact on Klal Yisrael. If you notice, someone said, Rabbi Chap's not wearing a tie. Like, what happened? I said, yeah. Rav Dan Salgil spoke about 10 years ago. He said, you have to find little things during the 9 days to do to feel the Avelis, to feel it's missing, And for me, it's hard to not to wear a tie. I'm going to South Africa tomorrow, and, important people wear ties. So, but I don't care. The basic things are more important. Everyone has to find, during these days, something in their life to feel chaser, that we're missing something. Because if you don't find that, if you don't think you're missing anything without the Beis Hamikdash, then you're really missing something. So let's all look and try to find where we can, each person, to contribute what they can to Klal Yisrael, to rebuild the status quo, and to be mechanech our children properly, our talmidim, and halavai we should be zocheh the Beis Hamikdash b'karv. Amen. Kain. T.A. Ratzon.